It's no secret, I think, to anybody who's been following the news at all over the last couple of years that there is huge concern that China and the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, are planning or have detailed plans to invade Taiwan. China believes that Taiwan is part of China, though it never has been. And I expect, emboldened by President Putin's actions and other people's actions recently, China feels that it could subjugate Taiwan. It is also no secret that that Taiwan has been building up, modernizing its military, spending an awful lot of money on modern kit, drones, the like, air defense, all the sort of things that we've been discussing and seeing have been successful in Ukraine. But what we've also seen in Ukraine is if you don't train, if you don't practice, it's no good having all this kit. It means nothing at all. So I think very sensibly, the Taiwanese military have been practicing and rehearsing drills, not only for themselves, because this is modern warfare is hugely complex. Everybody's saying AI is going to do all the heavy lifting in this area. Well, it does to a certain degree, but you still need to train, and you need to train soldiers, so that the drills become absolutely second nature. So I think the first reason Taiwan's doing that is so that they're proficient, that they can do the best they can. And secondly, of course, it's a message to the Chinese that they're not going to give up. Let's not forget, we turn back to the 24th of February 2022, and Putin thought Ukraine would just roll over. He thought it would take him 3 days to do a special military operation. And I think probably hitherto that the Chinese probably thought they could just waltz into Taiwan. Now, I think that is not the case. All the effort Taiwan's gone to, all the allies it's got, not least the United States, it's demonstration of capability. China now knows that if it is going to invade Taiwan, it's going to have a hell of a fight to take it. The greater art of war is to prevent it or to win without fighting. And that I think is what Taiwan's doing. I think they're right to do it. If China could subjugate Taiwan without much of a struggle, I'm sure they would do it. I mean, they keep telling us that's what they're going to do. And they are, they're an autocratic regime. Although they wouldn't like to say they were similar to the Russians, they absolutely are. So I think it is an area of great concern. The current purges going on in the People's Liberation Army in China, though, give us some hope. And I think, probably a real headache for the Chinese leadership in Beijing that actually things aren't all rosy. They look across the straits to Taiwan, they see a really professional army that is modern, that is up for a fight, and it looks at its own army, and it's had to get rid of half of its generals at a very time when they should be consolidating, training and practicing if they are, going to invade Taiwan. Xi is an autocratic leader like Putin, and we see Putin doing exactly the same. When commanders don't follow his rules to the absolute letter, and we think of people like Surovikin in Syria and Ukraine, who, at one stage were the greatest Russian general, but as soon as he did something that Putin didn't like, he got rid of it. And I expect that might be the same with Xi and his generals. I expect some of them are saying, hang on, we might not be able to roll over Taiwan. We might not be able to do this dead easy. And those are probably not the answers that he really wants. It's clear that corruption is endemic within the People's Liberation Army, similar to the Russian army. And if you're about to conduct a major operation, those are the sort of things that tear you apart. Lots of people think that warfare has been changed by drones or modern tech, but it hasn't. The principles of war are absolutely as they ever were. Maintenance of the aim, concentration of force, deception, leadership, all these sort of things are absolutely key. And Xi's probably looking at what he's got, and if people are disagreeing with him, he's thinking that that is not going to win him Taiwan dead quickly. he may well be thinking he wants some younger, more vibrant generals in there who perhaps understand, the tech available on the battlefield a bit better than some of the older leadership. But it shows instability. It shows lack of trust, and when that is swishing around, a military the size of the PLA, then that is really not good news for China. But it gives us some hope on the outside that actually China is not in a position to invade Taiwan at the moment. And I think all the noises that Taiwan can make, all the noise that the Japanese and the Americans can make to say that they are not going to allow Taiwan to slip below the Chinese waves, as it were. The fact that there is derision between various factions, if you mention the fact that a number of senior leadership in the military have been removed, shows that things aren't perfect. And perhaps, a few years ago, China could switch everything off and, work behind, an iron curtain as such as the Russians used to. But, China is such a electronically connected country these days, they just can't do it. So I don't think it seems unlikely that the Chinese government will implode, but it does seem likely that there are ruffles and they're having challenges. And in a way, for global security, that's a good thing, because it makes it less likely that they're going to invade Taiwan, anytime soon. But I'm sure it's not completely off the cards. All the inference that commentators like me and others are taking around the world is that, China, its military is not in a position to do anything at the moment. So obviously the Chinese don't want us to believe that. So coming up and saying, plans unchanged, we still intend to take Taiwan, what one would expect nothing less. Had they said nothing at all, then that would have exacerbated the situation. But the plain facts is they're having trouble in their military. They are an untested military, certainly in the current modern technical environment. And the people they want to subjugate, seem to be really on their game and, are readying for a fight, which China probably doesn't want to get involved in this stage. So I think it is as to be expected, but it should take a little bit of heat out of the situation. It does seem unlikely that they would do that. And of course, not a million miles away, we've got the American fleet. We've got Trump flexing his muscles in the Middle East, threatening Iran, another autocratic tyranny. And, I think a bit of that from the Americans is a nod towards Beijing, saying, we are not going to sit passively by if you take Taiwan. And the Americans have said this before, but, I think a lot of people have taken that as being hot air for the last few years. But with what Trump's done with Maduro in Venezuela, to some of his actions, or certainly his rhetoric over Greenland, what he is doing at the moment in the Gulf, this must be a metric that is preying on the Chinese leadership, because maybe under a different American president, they thought that they could probably get away with doing whatever they liked. But actually, to our chagrin, Trump is not sort of berating the Russian leadership as he is potentially berating the Chinese leadership over a land grab. So, yeah, I think there are an awful lot of things at the moment that would be focusing the Chinese minds and perhaps making, their possible invasion of Taiwan, kicked into the long grass, which can only be a good thing.